Well, hey guys, welcome to today's video. I'm out here in my mum field. That's right, I'm growing mums this year, and I briefly mentioned this in a video some time ago, and that I'd be showing you a little bit more about what we're doing out here. But this is out in the farthest part of our nursery, on the very backside of our property. And you know, our nursery where we sell all of our plants is up there on that end, and you know, we're way out here kind of in a less visible area, but doing a very important thing and trying to learn and figure this out as we go. So we'll talk a little bit about what mums are and why I think that's even important that I do that, and a little bit about how we're going to go about doing this and how we've got everything out here laid out. So let's dive into the wonderful world of mums. So what are we talking about when I'm talking about growing mums? Now, the reason I need to mention this is because the last time that I mentioned that I had bought supplies for mums, there were quite a few comments on there that do not know or understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about growing mums. Some of you think the word MUM is what you call your mother in England or Great Britain, and I'm not talking about anyone's mom, or mother. So let's get that out of the way. We're not growing mothers out here in our mum field. What mums are, at least in my part of the country, are chrysanthemums. So M-U-M, the last three letters, and chrysanthemum. And what these are grown for, at least in my neck of the woods, are primarily for fall enjoyment, for fall decorations, and for the fall season. So you have to grow them all summer long so they're ready, nice and pretty by the fall. Typically, at least where I live, these are not grown as perennials. They're grown in pots to be used and enjoyed just for a season, and most people typically throw them out. Though they are technically perennial plants, they can be planted and grown in the ground. The way that I'm doing mine, they are not typically grown and used for that purpose. Typically, these are just grown for the fall and sold and used as part of fall and autumn decorations, and they're tossed out by the time early winter comes. Now, out here in my mum field, which this is what I'm calling my mum field, the first thing I did was lay the ground cover down. I showed you guys a video of us putting the ground cover down, preparing for this. So we got it down, we got it fastened down good. And the next thing that I did was fill up all the pots. Now, these pots are somewhere around 2.5 gallons each in size. At least that's the amount of potting soil that they hold. And you know, when you start running that out over we've got about 800 mums out here, you know, you multiply that times 2.5 gallons or so per pot, it takes a lot of potting soil to get this project done. And the most labor intensive and the hardest part, physically the hardest part of putting all this together was definitely just getting the pots filled. So we got all of the pots filled and got them laid out here, and we weren't putting the actual mum plants in the pots yet at that point. We're just getting the pots out here. And then we decided, once we had all the pots in place, to lay our irrigation lines from there. The irrigation setup is actually pretty simple. So this is what I'm going to call my main line right here. This is a 1-inch water line. And it's just this poly pipe, whatever you call it. I don't know what it's called, but this is the material that you use for drip irrigation. And then we just branched off of the line here. So you can see that that branch goes out and it has 2 rows on each side of a branch. So that means we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. There's 8 branches that run from this line, that run off of this line down here. There we go. 8 branches that run that way for a total of 16 rows of mums. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on down to 16 rows. And I've come out a little further into the field just to show you what happens from there. So here's one of your branches that runs out, and we have these little 4-way splitters here that you insert into your branch line, and each one of these goes to its own pot. So for example, this line goes into this pot, and this little stick that I have here in my hand, when you turn the irrigation on, it just drips very slowly out the end, out the tip there, and it just soaks each pot by drip irrigation. Now, I have debated with myself quite a bit over how much of this I wanted to or wanted to not show you, because I'm in a little bit over my head here trying to explain exactly what all this is, but because I'm only partially sure myself. But let me see if I can dumb this down enough that maybe you can understand it and I can explain it. So this is our fertilization system. This is how we fertilize and water our moms that are out in the mom field. So over here, you see this is just a garden hose, and this is our main water supply for the whole mom field. So it comes in here, and I've just built a little PVC setup here and just fastened it to plywood so I can see it and reach it and just have it set up. So this is our main water supply line, and when it gets to here, you can either turn this valve or this valve to determine if the water is going to go that way or this way. If you turn this valve off, it forces the water to go down this way, which I have this in the off position, but when it's on, it runs down through this green hose and into this injector, and this is a fertilizer injector, and right below this injector, there is a water tank that's got fertilizer mixed in, liquid fertilizer mixed in to the water that's water soluble. Just a slightly different look here. There's the injector tube going down. There's a tank down here, just a stock tank, and I put a piece of plywood over the top of it to keep trash out of it. So then this little machine here, this little pump pulls fertilizer up through a straw with a little tube and injects it into the water line. And then the water line continues over here. It comes out of the injector here, back up through here, over and back down. And this line on this far side over here just goes back out and serves the main line that I showed you just a minute ago. So it's really not complicated, but it's just part of the process of growing moms that you've got to be aware of, at least how I'm doing it. There are other ways to do this, and I can't stress that enough. This is just how I'm doing it. So the fertilizer schedule that I'm running on, 3 or 4 days you use fertilizer, and then you can turn these in the off position, both of these, and put this one in the open position and just run clear water. So it bypasses that altogether. So just up and over and down, no problem to just run clear water if you don't want to inject fertilizer. So that's part of the process of fertilization is with moms, there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. And I do not know what the best way to do it is for my setup, for my climate. I'm really not sure. So I've got a fertilizer schedule, and I'm going to follow it until or unless I have problems. And then I'm going to try to find help, and I don't know. I'm going to learn and figure this out as I go. But I do know that this process is in place, that I've got my injector set up, and that it is working properly. And I think I'm off to a good start. So I'm going to turn this on and let it run. Let me let you hear. My pots out here are completely saturated. It's rained like crazy today. But I'm going to just turn this on for a second and show it to you so you can see what it looks like, even what it sounds like when it's running. So I'm just going to turn the water on. Okay, so now it's coming up, it's coming over because it stopped here, coming over and down through the injector. It's clicking. That just means that water's running through it. It's just powered by water. It's not electric motor. It's just powered by the water running through it. You can see the straw down here has turned blue. The tube down here has turned blue. That's just a tube that's siphoning up the blue fertilized water, injecting here, up, and out over there. So let's go pull a dripper and see what that looks like. Now I've come back out into the mom field. The injector is running over there, and we'll just randomly grab one here. We'll pull it. Let's see if you can see this. And you can see the water dripping there, and that is fertilized water. It drips real slow. I run this for about 30 or 45 minutes each morning, and it saturates these pots completely. And the way that these work, this setup I'm using, you can just push that down in there, and it's somewhere towards the middle of the pot. And as that runs, this is a peat-based potting mix, which is very absorbent, like a sponge, and it will soak up water for the whole pot. Now, if you're using like a pine bark-based mix, this doesn't work because it's just going to go right through the bottom and not absorb. But using a peat base, this is the way to go. So that's what all of these pots out here are getting fertilized at the same time right now, just literally through drops of water, fertilized water. It's just dripping, dripping, dripping. And, you know, it took a little bit of trial and error, just a little testing here and there to figure out how long it needed to run each day to actually soak the pots. But we're going to turn this water off. I'm going to turn this water / fertilizer off because none of these need any water today because we've had so much rain. Now, as I've already mentioned, there's more than one way to do this that works, but what you have to have dialed in for moms, because they are very heavy feeders, you have to have your water, your irrigation, you have to have your irrigation and your fertilizer dialed in. Now, here a couple of things. Number one, you don't have to use all this spaghetti tubing and you don't have to do it the way that I'm doing it with the irrigation. You can use drip tape if you want to use drip tape. That's a way to do it. There are pluses and minuses of doing it any way that you do it. You can grow mums with overhead irrigation. I've seen people do that, at least I've read online where they've done it and seen the experimentation of where they've actually had very good results growing these almost the same way that I grow most of my other plants. So apparently it is possible to do it that way, but it's curious to me that you never see a mom field laid out that way. If you just see them, you know, just out driving around, or if you've got a friend or something, you know, that grows them, they're doing some sort of injection and drip irrigation system, whether they use tape or whether they use tubing or whatever it is that they use. I am in no way an expert on growing mums. In fact, I've never grown a single mum in my life, but I'm trying right now. So I promise I'm going to show y'all how this turns out, whether it turns out great or if it turns out terrible. So it's my first go around at this, and we'll just have to see how it goes. Now, it's worth mentioning, I'll grab one of these, pop that out. It's worth mentioning, you know, this is a big mum pot. This is a 12-inch pot, and I'm trying to grow some gigantic mums. You know, I want this thing to be 18 plus inches wide, 20 inches wide. And it's early June right now, and we want these to be that size, you know, somewhere by the middle or so of September, something like that. So, you know, you got about 3 months of growing season on these things, give or take some. That's going to always vary by your location. And in the northern part of the country, they need to be ready to sell and ready to go earlier than that. Further south, a little bit later. It just varies. It always varies with your season. So one of my goals, though, is to grow big, giant mums. I don't know why, but it just seems like people want the big, gigantic mums. And we have had these the last couple of years that we've just bought in from wholesale growers. Nobody ever complained that our mums were too big, but occasionally, if not frequently, people wanted to know if we had bigger ones. And the ones that we had were really nice. So just saying that to say, I think we can do really well with this project. There's definitely a demand for mums for, you know, 6 weeks or something like that in the fall, heading into, you know, the end of October. And we're going to do our part for our city, for our county, for our town that we live in, to try to supply a whole bunch of these to as many people as we can. Now, for most of you guys who are watching my channel and are familiar with our channel, you're familiar with the types of plants that we typically grow here in our nursery. Plants like the greens, all sorts of evergreens that we grow. We grow lots of plants like crepe myrtles here. You can see the mums there in the background, but we do crepe myrtles, and we do all sorts of shrubs here. Like this is a yellow holly shrub, and we've got hydrangeas all over the place out here. Let's see, there's a oak leaf hydrangea right here behind me. There's a sweet bay magnolia tree right here. Lots of stuff out here. That's kind of the typical things that we grow in our nursery. Then up towards our retail area where we've got all of our plants like perennials and a lot more hydrangeas and shrubs that we grow up there. So delving off into the world of mums is a very different kind of thing for us. It's not like growing the other plants that we grow. You don't use the same type of potting soil, or at least I'm not using the same type of potting soil. You don't use the same type of irrigation. You don't use the same type of fertilizer. So really, there's not anything about it that's the same as what I'm used to doing in my nursery. So there's a whole learning process that's taking place here in order for me to be able to do this at all. And the truth is I really genuinely do not know what I'm doing. I've never tried to do this before. So I'm not going to get into a ton of detail about all the nuts and bolts of it, because I don't actually know if what I'm doing is the correct way to do it, but I'm going to show you the way that I'm doing it, at least in this, my first year. I know I'm confident in my layout and that I've got everything working correctly, but as far as fertilization goes, which is critical to the growth of mums, we're going to just have to see how this thing goes. Now, just to show you one or two of these, a little bit more detail. Here's one of our mum pots. This is just a random pot out here. This is I believe that's going to be a red-ish colored mum. Yeah, it looks really nice in that pot. These are growing really well, and all varieties don't look the same. Some of them aren't as big, some of them aren't as far along as others. This is probably, it's one of our more average looking ones to slightly above average ones, but they're really nice. We potted these about 10 or 12 days ago, and since we potted, our weather has been really bad for mum growing. Mums like hot, dry weather, and we have had cloudy, rainy weather. It's rained 7 out of the last 8 days here, and we have standing water out here in places. Fortunately, there's a little bit of a slope from left to right here, so the water drains off here, but down here at the end, At the end of this row, you can see here, all of these are standing in water. Now, that water does not stay there long, and when I laid the mum field out here, I didn't know that a puddle formed right here, but when we've had really heavy rain, you know, this will sit here for, I don't know, 12 to 24 hours, so not a good situation for mums. Those may die, but as soon as it's not super wet out here, which only takes a matter of hours for it to run off, those will not be sitting in water. So if we wind up losing 6 or 8 of them right there, then we just do, but I'm gonna just leave them. Don't really have a better place to put them. But other than that, we don't have any problems so far that I know of. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the next weeks go, as it's about to get really hot and summertime is here. And these things should start growing like crazy once the weather gets right and we get them on a better schedule with irrigation and all the rest. So here's hoping to a great first season of growing out somewhere around 800 mums. So guys, that is it for today's video, but I wanted to give you kind of the bird's eye view, kind of the layout of what's going on out here. I'll update this as the summer goes on and just kind of show you the plants from time to time so we can together see how they're doing and, you know, hope for the best out here. So I guarantee you it's going to be a learning process for me. If nothing else, if this whole thing goes to crap, I'm at least going to learn what not to do. So I'm trying to pay attention on every move I make so I know what I'm doing. And so I can look back and say, well, here's what I did, whether it's right or wrong. So guys, I'm excited about this. There's not a lot left to do with it. You know, they just grow, and I don't really do anything between now and the end of the season, the growing season for them, except just basically water them and watch them grow. But you know, watering, like I showed you, it's just a matter of turning a valve on and off. So not really anything to that. So looking forward to just moving on with it and sharing it with you and seeing how this whole thing turns out. Well guys, I appreciate y'all watching today. If you're a praying person, y'all pray for our moms. I'm serious. I pray for our plants, and I'd love for you to just join me in that, just for the success of them, and that I learn how to take care of this and steward this thing the right way. So all the best to us as we're doing this, and you too as you're growing what you're growing this summer. Guys, I love y'all. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.